Hello everyone. Welcome to our animated philosophy series where we explore timeless concepts in a modern context. Today we're diving into Ludwig Wittgenstein's idea of language games, a concept that helps us understand how language works in our everyday lives. Let me ask you, have you ever played a game without knowing the rules? Maybe you tried joining a game of cricket, but all you knew was that there's a bat, a ball, and some running involved. You probably swung wildly or ran at the wrong time, and your teammates just stared at you, right? The reason for the confusion was simple: you didn't know the rules. Without the rules, your actions didn't make sense in the context of the game. Wittgenstein argues that language works in much the same way. Words, like the actions in a game, don't have inherent meaning on their own. Instead, their meaning comes from the context in which they are used, just like the rules of a game. This is what he calls a language game. And no, we're not talking about Scrabble. Imagine this: you're at a cricket match. The commentator says, "He's out." Now, in this context, what does out mean? It's part of the game's terminology. The player is no longer batting because they've been dismissed. But think about it. The word out can have many different meanings in different situations. If we were in a courtroom and a lawyer says the evidence is out, they mean the evidence has been dismissed or excluded from consideration, not that someone's been knocked out of a game. The same word, out, has completely different meanings depending on the context in which it's used. And that's exactly what Wittgenstein was trying to show us. He wanted us to stop thinking of language as just a list of words with fixed definitions. Instead, he emphasized that the meaning of a word comes from how it's used in a particular situation, just like a player's actions make sense only in the context of the rules of the game. Let me give you a real-world story that'll drive this home. Picture this: you've never played a card game like poker before, but you sit down with friends who are experts and they deal you a hand. You stare at your cards, unsure what to do. Then, someone says you need to fold. But you've never heard this term used in the context of a card game. You start folding your cards physically, literally bending them in half. Everyone laughs because what they meant was that you should forfeit the round, not destroy the cards. Here, the confusion arose because you didn't understand the rules of the game. The word fold has a very specific meaning in the poker language game, but that meaning doesn't carry over to other contexts like, say, laundry, where folding is about neatly arranging clothes. So what's the takeaway here? Just like with games, language is governed by rules that vary depending on the context or the activity we're engaged in. You can think of every conversation or situation as being its own game with its own set of rules. The words we use in a cricket match follow a different game than the words we use in a courtroom, or in a card game, or even when talking about a scientific experiment. Let's explore this a little further with another example. Think about the word right. If you're giving someone directions, right means a direction you turn, like left or right. But what if we're in a discussion about morality, and someone asks, "What's the right thing to do?" Now, right means something completely different. It's about ethics, not navigation. And if we're in a courtroom, the word right might refer to legal rights. You have the right to remain silent. In each of these situations, the word right gets its meaning from the particular context or the language game we're playing at the time. Wittgenstein's big idea is that we can't understand the meaning of words unless we look at the broader activity, the game they're a part of. So when we speak, we're always following the rules of a particular language game. And just like you wouldn't try to play cricket with the rules of chess, you can't assume that a word will mean the same thing in every context. Think about a doctor talking to a patient versus the same doctor talking to other medical professionals. The doctor might say, "Your heart is fine," to the patient, which is a simple way to convey that everything's okay. But in a conversation with a fellow cardiologist, the doctor might say something like, "The patient exhibits no signs of ischemia or arrhythmia." Here, the same basic idea, "your heart is fine," is conveyed using very different words because the language game has changed. With the patient, the doctor is speaking in everyday language. With the cardiologist, the doctor is speaking within the language game of medical professionals, which has its own set of rules and terminology. Now, let's take a moment to think about what this means in the broader picture of how we communicate. If words get their meaning from the context, then misunderstandings can arise when people are playing different language games without realizing it. One person might think they're talking about one thing, while the other interprets the words differently because they're playing a different game. Wittgenstein believed that much of the confusion in philosophy and in everyday life comes from failing to recognize which language game we're in. If we try to take words out of their original context, we lose the rules that give them meaning. So, next time you're in a conversation, remember, Language is a game with rules. The meaning of a word isn't fixed like a dictionary definition. It changes depending on the context, the rules of the game you're playing. Whether you're on a cricket field, in a courtroom, or at the poker table, understanding the language game is key to understanding the meaning. Thank you for learning with us. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights into similar echoes.